All right, here we go. Let's talk about the latest wild twist in the Kirk Cousins saga, because somehow there's still more to say. I know, this storyline's been beaten to death all off-season, but hang with me here. Some new stuff just dropped, and it might shake things up a bit. So over the weekend, Joe Flacco signed with the Cleveland Browns. Now, why does that matter? Well, a lot of people, myself included, thought Cleveland might be a potential landing spot for Kirk Cousins. That dream? Probably dead now. Flacco stepping in there makes it pretty clear the Browns are moving in a different direction. Personally, I'd say this Cousins to Cleveland thing is done. Done. But if you ask others, some might say it's just wounded. You know that movie scene where the good guy gets shot and you think he's finished, but right before the bad guy pulls the trigger again, bam! The first good guy makes a comeback? Yeah, it's like that. Technically alive, but let's be honest, it's not looking great. Now, if Cousins isn't heading to Cleveland, what are the options? First up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Honestly, that's probably the most realistic fit left, and even that feels like a stretch right now. Everyone's still waiting on Aaron Rodgers to either make things official with Pittsburgh or just move on. The guy loves the spotlight, no surprise there, but it's been over a month now. If Rodgers ends up somewhere else, I could absolutely see Steelers pivoting hard toward Cousins. But let's say Rodgers does wind up in Pittsburgh, doing his usual look-at-me thing. Is there another door open for Kirk? Well, maybe. How about the New Orleans Saints? Yeah, I know. It sounds ridiculous at first, but don't rule anything out in this league. Word is Derek Carr might be dealing with a shoulder injury serious enough to require surgery, one that could sideline him for the entire 2025 season. If that's true, New Orleans could be in the market for a quarterback real soon. Now, would the Falcons actually trade Cousins to a division rival like the Saints? I'd say almost no shot. Atlanta would need to feel like they absolutely fleeced New Orleans. And New Orleans? Same thing. They'd have to feel like they pulled a fast one on the Falcons. Nobody's just handing over a QB inside the division unless they're getting something real spicy in return. All right, so let's keep this Cousins talk rolling. Could the Falcons actually trade him to the Saints? I mean, it's a division rival. We're talking twice-a-year matchups. Atlanta's not going to hand over a decent quarterback just to make their own road harder, right? But what if the Falcons internally have already hit the "we're done here" button on Cousins? Like they look around the room and say, this dude's cooked, he's not the guy. In that case, yeah, maybe they would deal him to New Orleans. Because in that scenario, the Saints think they're getting a solid vet, while Atlanta's thinking, y'all just bought a lemon and we got a draft pick out of it. That kind of trade only happens if both sides think they won, when really, one of them's going to look dumb in a few months. Now, to be clear, the chances of this actually going down? Super slim. But hey, there aren't a ton of great options on the table for Cousins. So yeah, Flacco going to the Browns, that slammed the door shut on the Cleveland route. That's the bad news for Falcons fans who wanted to see Cousins shipped out of town. The good news? The Saints might just keep spiraling if they stay stuck without a real QB solution. That's always fun for the NFC South race. So who's winning more games in 2025, Falcons or Saints? I know what I think, but I'll let you debate that one. Now let's move on to another wild card. What about the Minnesota Vikings? Could Kirk go back? I know it sounds like a long shot, and believe me, every one of these ideas feels more and more like a reach. But check this out. J.J. McCarthy, the rookie QB Minnesota took 10th overall out of Michigan. He missed his entire first season after hurting his knee in the preseason. Needed surgery. Total redshirt year. And here's where it gets messy. There have been some follow-up procedures since then, and now there are whispers about whether the Vikings actually trust that he's going to be ready to roll in 2025. JJ's saying all the right things, positive attitude, feeling good, doing the rehab, but when your team is still poking around Aaron Rodgers rumors, that tells you they might not be all in on McCarthy just yet. And Rodgers, by the way, still hasn't signed with the Steelers. Could be that he's waiting for the Vikings to pick up the phone. Just something to stash in your mental notebook. Now imagine it's August. Training camp is in full swing. JJ's knee still isn't right. Vikings need someone they know, someone who's been in their building before. Why not just bring Cousins back for one more ride? Look, I get it. It'd be awkward. Cousins going back to Minnesota after they already moved on? Yeah, that's weird, but you know what? Stranger things happen in the NFL all the time. Reunions aren't rare. Heck, Joe Flacco didn't just stay away from Cleveland. He ended up right back there. So why not Cousins? Again, I'm not putting money on this happening, but if we're just tossing around realistic landing spots, this one's not off the board. There aren't many great options, and if you're trying to connect some dots, this one still makes a little bit of sense, especially if J.J. McCarthy isn't 100% come August. Now, before we jump into the last, and yeah, kind of goofy destination, let's bring it back full circle for a second. Kirk Cousins and the Cleveland Browns. At the start of all this, we said that deal felt somewhere between dead and hanging on by a thread. After Flacco signed, it's probably toast. But what this whole thing really boils down to is how serious are the Falcons about Cousins being a backup? Personally, I just don't see how that makes sense. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Kirk Cousins should not be the backup. And if he is, that's a ticking time bomb. You've got Michael Penix Jr. coming in, a young guy trying to lead the franchise, and now he's got Cousins hovering over his shoulder. That ain't the move. It's not about stats or arm strength, it's about the vibe in the locker room. You want a vet who's going to support the young gun, not stare daggers at him all season. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for disaster. That's how you end up with some big athletic expose in January called Where the 2025 Falcons Went Off the Rails. It'll start with Cousins sulking on the sideline thinking he should be QB1 while the kid's out there trying to learn and grow. 6 weeks after signing him, the Falcons drafted his replacement. That's not just tough, it's personal. And if the guy you brought in to lead isn't fully backed by the guy behind him, you're going to feel it every single Sunday. Sometimes it ain't about analytics or numbers. Sometimes it's just about reading the room. And right now, that room looks tense. Now, analytically speaking, yeah, there's a strong argument for having Kirk Cousins as your backup. Michael Penix Jr. had his fair share of injuries in college. And if we're just talking about who'd be the best number 2 quarterback in the league, Kirk's the guy, no doubt. But that's just the numbers. From Monday to Saturday, inside that locker room, that's a whole different story. You bring Cousins in to sit behind a rookie quarterback, especially one you just spent a top 10 pick on, and suddenly the air's a little thick. That's a lot of awkward energy. That ain't the kind of support a young quarterback needs trying to lead an NFL huddle for the first time. Now let's talk about Cleveland again. Yeah, Flacco's back in the mix. He's 40, and while he had that wild little stretch last year where he looked like 2012 Flacco again, let's not pretend he's their long-term guy. So the Browns still need to figure it out under center. And here's where it gets spicy. What if Atlanta's been bluffing? What if they don't really want to keep Kirk, and they're just waiting to see if someone bites? Let's say Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, other teams drop out, and the Falcons are just sitting there going, hey, Cleveland, listen, we'll eat most of Kirk's contract. You just give us a 7th rounder and take the guy off our hands. Now the Browns are thinking, all right, we've got Flacco, we've got Kenny Pickett, maybe a rookie in there too. But if Cousins is practically free, why not? I mean, if you're talking about who gives you the best shot to win week 1 of 2025, are you really rolling with Pickett or 40-year-old Flacco or a rookie who's maybe not quite ready? Most folks would still take a healthy Kirk Cousins in that scenario. So yeah, the whole Cleveland thing might feel dead, but there's a tiny sliver of hope it gets revived if the market crashes and Atlanta just wants to move on. Desperation and timing can make weird things happen in this league. And just when I thought we were wrapping this thing up with 3 teams, boom, 5 minutes before filming, a new name gets tossed into the hat: the Dallas Cowboys. Mike Florio dropped a little nugget about Dak Prescott's hamstring situation. Here's the quote: "I'm getting close to where I want to be. I don't want to put a percentage on it, but I imagine myself being involved in some sort of team activity soon." All right, what does that even mean? When a quarterback says he's close and doesn't want to put a percentage on it, that ain't exactly a confidence booster, especially for a team like Dallas, where expectations are sky high every year and patience is thin. You don't want to be caught flat-footed if Dak tweaks that thing again and you're left scrambling. Let's keep this thing rolling. Ready for me to hit the Cowboys scenario in full? So Dak's talking about his hamstring, says he's getting close to where he wants to be. All right, cool. But let's not forget that injury happened back in Week 8 in Atlanta. That's November, and we're now halfway through April. That's 5 months. Now, I ain't a doctor, but come on. Hamstrings don't usually take 5 months unless something's really off. We've seen guys pull a hammy, miss a couple weeks, and they're back out there mid-season. But Dak? Still not putting a percentage on it? Still saying things like, "I imagine I'll be involved in team activities soon"? That tells me it's worse than he's letting on. If you're 100% healthy, you just say it. If you're close, you give a number. If you're still talking in vague, hopeful terms, that's a red flag. And look at Dallas's quarterback room right now. Will Grier and Joe Milton fighting for QB2. But if Dak's hammy flares up again during camp, or Week 1's creeping in and he's not right, that QB2 could suddenly be QB1. And I don't know if the Cowboys want to bet their season on either of those guys. So let's say the draft ends, Dallas doesn't take a quarterback, and Atlanta gives them a call. "Hey, Jerry, listen, we saw what's going on there. We know Dak's not quite right. You want some insurance? We'll give you Kirk. Cheap. Just eat a little bit of the money. You're doing us a solid. We're doing you a solid." And honestly, I could see Jerry going for that. That's not a bad plan B, or C, or whatever letter we're on. Because if you're worried about Dak staying healthy, and with soft tissue injuries, it's a real concern, you better have someone who can run an offense, and Cousins can still sling it if healthy. So let's end with the big question. Where is Kirk Cousins going to be Week 1? Still in Atlanta? One of those 4 destinations we talked about? Somewhere else? Let me know in the comments. I still think the safe money is on the Falcons, but I'm going to be honest here. This is where personal opinion might be clouding the prediction. I don't think having Cousins as a backup is smart. I think it causes tension, bad energy in the locker room, all that. So I want to believe Atlanta sees that too. I'm hoping they look at it, say, "Yup, not worth it," and move on. But hey, they might not. Maybe they think it's fine. Maybe they don't see the issue. And if so, I'm just over here yelling into the void like a dummy, hoping someone agrees with me. Let's spin the wheel real quick and give a random shout out. Lav S, you legend. You had the comment of the year on that bachelor party video. Said, "I know Petey's lost some weight, but he looks really different here," when Joey filled in for me. Comedy gold. Also, shout out Anthony Richardson. Not a great QB yet, but hopefully a great viewer. 2 claps for Anthony. Clap, clap. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, folks. Let's see what the NFL chaos brings next.